Alexa. I'm head of community at Housecall Pro.
My name is Roland. I'm one of the co-founders of Housecall Pro.
We host the Pro Talks webcast series. You can think of it as a TED Talk for people of the trades and blue-collar workers.
So when the pandemic hit, there was a lot of information coming from the federal government, from the local governments, and we wanted to make sure that we could take that information, deconstruct it, make it simple and actionable for our home service professionals to be able to make sure that the money coming from the government would hit their banks so that they could stay open and ultimately growing.
So it started off as a response, has really turned into this amazing public service, and we've had the opportunity to have on so many incredible guests to our show.
We have hundreds of live viewers, and the recorded version gets viewed millions of times. Our audience consists of home service professionals and small business owners. Join us and make season 2 the best season yet.
Welcome to another episode of Pro Talks. We are so happy and honored to have Kristen Hadeed with us here. I'm just going to do a quick intro on Kristen before we get into the bulk of our talk with her. So we were actually introduced to Kristen through our guest Simon Sinek, which I'm sure a lot of you watched this episode. So Kristen is the founder of StudentMaid. It's a successful cleaning company that has employed thousands of students over the last decade, and that is known for building the next generation of leaders. Remember this because it comes into play later on. So when Kristen started her journey, she really had no idea what she was in for. She had a huge turnover rate, which is really, really common for the home cleaning industry, but it's a lot to learn at a young age when you're kind of just shooting by the hip. That's what they say. But Kristen has built an incredible team of executives and also just employees at StudentMaid. So she believes that StudentMaid's success boils down to one thing, and that is creating a place with humanity at its core. And that is what we're going to talk about today. So before we get started, we're going to do our signature Greenberg round because we want to get to know Kristen in 1 minute or less. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. Where do you live?
Houston, Texas.
What did you have for breakfast, if any?
Green juice.
Green juice. Favorite place you've ever traveled?
Oh, don't do this to me. Malta.
Malta.
Wow.
That is a new one.
Love to go. Favorite thing about your career so far?
I get to work with amazing people.
What is a life-changing book, podcast, or course that you have had in your life?
Delivering Happiness, written by Tony Hsieh, which helped me understand what culture is.
Ooh, that's a great book. All right. Something that a lot of people don't know about you if they're looking around online.
I love rap music.
I like it.
That is awesome. Okay, so we're going to get to know Kristen throughout this whole thing too, but that's just a little tidbit into her life. So, Kristen, you were such a unique guest for us because you not only are an author and a speaker and a coach, but you're also a home service professional yourself. You've been in there doing the work, and a lot of people can't say that. And you have been in this industry and still are in this industry. So can you please tell us briefly about your story with StudentMaid? Why did you start it and how it's grown over the years before we dig into the really big change?
Yeah. So, it was never my intention to start the company. And actually, I was in school studying finance, thought that I would move to New York, and my plan was not to be a cleaning business owner. But what happened, 19 years old, I didn't have any money, very broke. My friends invited me one day to go shopping. So I decided to go, even though I had no money. And as we were shopping, we walked by this store that had a pair of jeans in the window. And I don't know what it was about these jeans, but I saw them and I thought, I have to have those. I will do whatever it takes, to make enough money to buy these jeans. They were $99. And my first thought was to put an ad on Craigslist to clean someone's house. And I have to be honest with you, I don't really know why that was my first idea, because it's not like, I didn't love cleaning. It wasn't something that I was passionate about or anything. Maybe I thought it was a fast way to make the money. And a woman hired me. And for those of you listening who are in the cleaning world, you will love this. So woman hires me. She has a 4,000 square foot house. I have no professional cleaning experience. And I show up with only a bottle of Windex and my own toilet scrubber to clean her 4,000 square foot house. And it was a disaster. I mean, it took me 7 hours. And at 7 hours, I wasn't even finished. It was just dark. She had put her kids to bed. She was ready to go to bed. So she basically kicked me out of her house. It wasn't even finished, but she paid me and I left and I bought the jeans and I thought that was it. And then the next day she called me back and I thought she was calling to complain because now, you know, she could see what I had done in her home now that it's daylight.
It wasn't dark.
Yeah.
She's like, did you use your own toilet scrubber?
Thank goodness she let me use her vacuum. I mean, how would I have been able, you know, I was clueless. But anyway, she called and said, look, I really need help. I'll teach you how to clean. What if you were to clean my house every week? And that's kind of how it all started. And she told her friends about me and they told their friends about me. And you know, a lot in this business is word of mouth. So then next thing I knew, I was cleaning 7 days a week in between class, on the weekends. And I would try to recruit my friends to help me and they weren't interested because I would tell them all of these crazy stories of clients that I had. You know, I remember I had one client who had a laser pointer and he walked me through his house and pointed at everything with this laser pointer, all these things that I had missed. So I would tell my friends these stories and then I would say, you want to work with me? And they'd say, no. You know, so for a long time it was just me. But the turning point, and I think when I really realized this is a business, happened right before my last year in school. So I was 21 and I lived in a college town. I was in Gainesville, Florida, a lot of university students. And they were looking for cleaning companies to clean these big apartment buildings. So huge contracts, 800 units at a time. And you had maybe 3 weeks to clean everything and get it turned over. So I signed a contract not having any leadership experience, business experience, and hired 60 people only for this very short-term contract. But that was really the experience that made me fall in love with the business, the challenge of the business, and ended up turning down a job in finance. And here we are 13 years later.
So I'm curious how you got a contract that big with no experience doing a job that big. You had to have done or said something right.
There's some fake it till you make it that happened at some point along this road.
Yeah.
So that's a funny story. Okay, I meet a property manager. And we kind of met just sort of by chance. It wasn't at a networking event or a business thing. I was actually working out in a gym with my friend at her apartment complex. And she happened to introduce me to the property manager. And somehow it came up that I have a cleaning business. And he said, oh, I have this opportunity for you. In the summer, there's this really big time called turn where all these apartments turn over. We need them cleaned. I would love for you to clean this property. He gave me his card. And I thought, because I was so naive and really inexperienced in business, I thought that meant I had the contract. We emailed back and forth. He invited me to come to a meeting. I thought I was going to sign the contract. And when I showed up, there were 50 other cleaning business owners in the room. And I realized very quickly that I didn't have any contract, that I had been invited to just compete for this contract. And there were 24 apartment managers that stood in the front of the room, and you had to go to each person, he was one of them, and you had to convince them to choose your cleaning company. And I had no business card. I didn't even have employees, okay? So I had no confidence in myself and in my ability to be able to do this, but I had a loan. I took out a $10,000 loan. And I had been turned down over 20 times. I finally got this loan and I spent it on all the things I needed for the contract. So that is the only reason why I didn't leave that room, because I knew that I had to pay that $10,000 back. And I remember just telling myself, you have no choice. You need to give yourself a pep talk and go to these people and tell them that you can do it. And that's what I did. And I learned that if you believe in you, and you can have that positive self-talk, other people will see it and they'll believe in you. So I ended up getting 9 contracts, no business card, for sure the youngest one in the room and the least experienced in the room. And then I got 9 contracts and I thought, oh, I need to hire some people. So I very much learned by just going. I didn't ever have a plan. I just kind of took one step and then took another step. And that's really how this whole business has been.
Wow.
I feel like sometimes you have to have your back up against the wall to really know what you're made out of, to then go, well, I got to do it. I don't have a choice. Mm-hmm. Like, this is my contract. And by default, I'm the winner. But you have to be put in a position where, like you did, you put up $10,000.
Yeah. First it was jeans. First you really wanted those jeans. And now you got to pay back that $10,000 loan, honey.
Yeah. And, I think too, we only learn by getting it wrong. And so when I got the $10,000, this is really embarrassing, but one of the first things I did when I got that money was I called all my great friends and I said, meet me at the nicest sushi restaurant in town. And I spent $1,000. I mean, I just cringe even thinking that I did this. $1,000 of my $10,000 loan on sushi for all my friends, and it's like looking back, wow. And I'm sure for many of you, you look at some of the choices you've made in your business and you think, what was I thinking? But that's how you learn. It's how you learn.
So while you were building this business, there's another big learn that you had. So at some point you had a really big shock. And this was when all your employees quit on the same day. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about this, because I feel like a lot of our pros have gone through either something similar, or they've had one of their crew leads just step out and leave, or someone important in their company just leave like out of the bat and it came as a surprise. So maybe like, what did you learn and how did you get through it? What kind of advice would you give to someone else?
So you're talking about the best, worst day of my life. So I'll explain why it was the worst and then why it became the best. So 3 days into the contract, right? The one that I was just telling you about, where we have all these apartments to clean. I hired 60 people to help. They were all students. And 3 days into the contract, 45 of those 60 people walked out. And they quit at the same time. They came into where I was sitting. I was in the clubhouse office of one of these apartment complexes, and they didn't give me really any explanation. Someone just kind of stood forward in front of the group and said, we quit. We're done with this job. And it was such a traumatizing moment to lose 75% of the team like that, and to not understand why. And because I was such a new leader and a new business owner, I didn't have the insight or the self-awareness to recognize that I was a part of the problem. I mean, I didn't know anyone's names. I didn't know to give people a break. I didn't know any of that. And I was just sitting in this office while everyone was cleaning and doing all this hard work, not because I thought I was better than everyone, but because I truly didn't know what I was supposed to do. I mean, I had been cleaning houses. It's not like I thought cleaning was beneath me. I just thought as the leader, you're supposed to sit there in case anyone needs your help. And it was boring. And so 3 days in, they quit. And I knew I had to get them back. So I went and I found the 15 people who hadn't quit, and I told them what happened. And together we made this plan to have an emergency meeting. And we promised everyone an early paycheck if they showed up. So everyone showed up. Mm-hmm. And I remember just being honest and just saying, look, I have no idea why you quit. I think I did something wrong. The most embarrassing thing is I don't even know what I did wrong. And I just kind of laid it all out there. I didn't let my ego get in the way. I didn't pretend like I knew what I was doing. I was really honest about the fact that I was clueless. And one person said, I'll come back. And after that, someone else, and then someone else. Next thing you know, they're all coming back. And I think what I learned is when you mess up, and sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. We have to experience things to learn. But when you mess up, the best thing you can do is admit it, and to not let your ego get in the way, and to not let these moments defeat you, to see how you can learn from them and grow from them and be better. And so I remember asking the team, what can I do to be better? And I learned so much about leadership, which is why it then became the best day of my life. Because when I look back at my journey, even though it was such a bad day, I would never take it back, because that's where I learned about leadership, about the importance of culture and making people feel good when they're working. And, if that hadn't happened, I don't think I would have learned any of those lessons.
Yeah, I feel like, so Jocko came on Pro Talks in season 1, and his book is Extreme Ownership. And it's just, it's all about just, even if someone else screws up, it's my fault, because I either didn't train them enough or give enough support, and just flipping that mindset of, no ego, all that humility that you really showed at such a young age. Those are really impressive things that I feel like even leaders that are much older still struggle with. So if you guys are out there struggling with, I can't admit fault, I can't look weak. It's not about that. And I think there's a lot of humanity in these things. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, Alexa, you got a question.
Yeah, I have so many questions for Kristen, trust me. The not looking weak part, I think, is something that really hits home with our pros specifically, because you're supposed to show up, you're supposed to be that leader, but how are you supposed to do that if you don't even really know how to be? So when you did ask your people, what did I do wrong? And I genuinely want to learn, what did they tell you? And then what did you do to actually take that feedback to heart and not let it get you really down and say, screw this, I'm going to go get that finance job again because I can't deal with this harsh reality?
Well, I think they left because they didn't think that I cared about them. And I wasn't giving them a reason to really want to show up to work, not knowing people's names and not working alongside them and never going in to check on them. And simple things like someone said, we haven't had a lunch break. And I thought, oh, I just thought people would automatically eat if they needed to eat. I didn't know that I had to say, you can take a lunch break. These were the things I just didn't know. So I think my relationship with failure is probably why I was able to bounce back quickly. And I grew up in a home where my parents really taught us that failure was about learning. And whenever you fail, you have to talk about it. And so I remember at dinner, my parents would ask us, what didn't go well today? And what did you learn from it? And they would talk about what didn't go well in their days. And they would say what they learned from it. So they were modeling that, it's okay to talk about it and it's okay to have a bad moment, but you have to identify what you learned from it and you have to be able to look for that learning moment and lesson. So my advice to those listening who maybe don't have the same relationship with failure is the next time you fail, how can you take some time to just reflect? Yes, you can have a pity party. It's okay to sulk and feel bad for a little while, but you don't want to stay in that. Part 2 is the reflection. What happened? Why did this happen? Is there anyone I need to talk to get their perspective so I can better understand how this happened? And what is the gift? What is the lesson here? How am I going to take this hard moment and make it something that I can look back on later and actually say, as hard as that was, I learned something from it. And maybe even I'm glad it happened. So I've tried to also create that same dynamic on our team. When we have a really hard moment as a team, we talk about it. We talk about what we learned from it. How can we make sure if we're ever faced with this again, we handle it differently? What should we do? Because I really think that if you do it differently, that's not failure. Failure is you fail and then you repeat the exact same thing again, expecting that you would get a different result.
Yeah, and I feel like this concept exists in so many other places. So in the military, you hear debriefs, after every exercise, what did you do wrong? How can you do better? Also, internally at us as a software company, we do what we call retrospectives. So after each, what we call an iteration or a sprint, we go back and we're, hey, what's the good, what's the bad, and what's the ugly? Mm-hmm. And you're right. The only failure is if you have identified you failed on something last time and then you didn't fix it. If something fails along the way, that's okay. And in fact, that's part of the process, and don't be afraid of that. So that's really, really good advice.
Mm-hmm. Whether that's a new cleaning technique, whether that's a new sales strategy you're using, or a different way you're picking up the phone to take a call from a customer, debriefs on that level are extremely important, even as you work your way up into the leadership and the operational aspect. So that is something that has been a lesson throughout Pro Talks is do your debriefs, do your good, bads, and uglies. Even if you're scared of the ugly will be a good one day.
Yeah, and even inviting your customers into that conversation. I can remember really meaningful conversations, customers that were unhappy, and I would take the time to really listen to them and to understand where did the breakdown happen. And, I would ask questions like, can you help me understand so I can make sure this never happens again? And they would be happy to share and to make it a learning opportunity. We would do customer focus groups where we would take 3 or 4 customers to lunch, or maybe, meet them virtually and say, okay, what are the things you think we could be doing better as a company? So I think a lot of times we shy away from these conversations because they're hard, they're uncomfortable, but really there's so many gifts that can exist in a conversation like that.
Do you find that your customers and employees, when you ask them those questions and to give you feedback, are willing to just give it to you, no fluff, no anything? Do you think there's a certain way to ask so that you'll get actual constructive feedback and not just, you're doing a great job, love you so much, see you next Thursday?
Right. So if it were me, the way that I would have a feedback session with my own team is I would make sure that the team understands what the meeting is, that I want them to be honest and real, and I want them to bring their real feedback. And I would actually give them some homework to work on before the meeting. So one of the questions I love asking is, if you had one recommendation to make our company better, what would it be? And you could say, okay, everyone think about this question and then bring your answer to this meeting that we're going to have. And I want everyone to share, and I'm going to take notes on everything you say, and we're going to see what comes out of this. So I think it's up to us as leaders to create the space for our people to have these conversations with us and to ask them powerful questions like, what's your recommendation of a way we can improve? Or what is something that you think is currently not working? And what are your ideas to make it better? Things like that.
Yeah, I feel like Barbara Corcoran did the same thing with the idea box, and everyone's invited to come in with their ideas. Everyone put it in. She'd read every single one out loud and pay them for each one, so there was no stupid idea. And people were just encouraged to throw like everything at the wall. And then she would do the same, like you said, take notes and take action based upon those things. But that way, everyone feels like they have a voice and that you care about them. And then when those two things fall in place, it helps take your business to that next level.
Yeah, and and sometimes here's a hard thing that can happen in leadership. Sometimes people have amazing ideas, but we can't implement them because maybe we don't have the resources. We don't have the money to implement it, or the timing isn't right, or it's just not feasible. And that's, what do you do? What do you say? How do you make sure that person still feels valued, even though you can't implement their idea? And what I would say is be honest. Tell the person exactly why it's not possible. Tell them that you care about them. Tell them that you're so thankful that they shared this idea with you, but be real about why it can't happen. Because if people are coming to us with ideas and then we don't implement them and we don't explain why, sometimes what our people can think is we don't care. And then they stop coming with ideas because they think, oh, why should I come? It doesn't matter. They don't do anything with what I offer anyways. So if you can make sure to give that feedback as to why you're not implementing something, you'll still have people coming to you with ideas.
Yeah, I feel like it also helps them understand a little deeper, maybe why there's business decisions being made, so they're even more bought in. So they can really start to understand like, oh, okay, because this would increase the insurance risk premium, or, I don't know, something which would then force it so we don't have enough money to pay you guys. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Rather than just a blanket no. I think the golden nugget that you gave is like explain truly the why. Because I feel like there's a learning moment in it for them too. And if you're willing to share those things, ultimately you might be building your own competitor, but you need to not think that way. Give everything back out because that will ultimately make your own business stronger.
Totally.
So on your website, big and beautiful right there, it says, human in the way we lead, human in the way we work, human in the way we build our organizations, human in everything that we do. That is such a powerful statement, and I want to dissect it a little bit. Can you please share how being human has been put into action in StudentMaid and how you've taught that into the organizations that you have helped?
Well, I think what's been challenging about the business, but also really special, is because we're in a really tough industry. And you all know, more than anyone, this industry is tough. We have the turnover. The job is physically hard. You have those exhausting days. You have the customers that are really hard to please, and it can feel defeating. And then to top it off, the margins aren't the best. So you have to do a lot of work sometimes to have a lot of resources. And so you can't afford to pay people what you may really want to pay people and what you think people really deserve to do this kind of work. So if you don't have the job that is always fun every moment of the day, and you don't have the paycheck that you know is the most amazing paycheck, what do you have? And what I learned is you have the environment, you have the culture, you have the people, and that if we get that right, it turns out that what we do, the work we do, and even how much we're paid to do that work don't matter as much. Because sure, we could work in a job where it's a lot easier than cleaning and we could make a lot more money. But if we work with people who we don't feel care about us, and we work in a place where we don't have trust, or we don't feel safe, or we feel like we're just a number, that's not fun. And we're probably wanting to look for another job. So what I'm so thankful for is that StudentMaid has taught me that the environment matters more than anything. And I think it's about creating a human environment where people feel that they can be themselves, where they feel that their organization really cares about them, where our leaders can feel human. And I think that you kind of alluded to it. It's, why do we feel like we have to be strong all the time? Why do we feel like we can't admit weakness, or we can't, stand in front of people and say, I really messed this up? The thing is, we don't trust people when they are perfect. We don't trust people when they never need our help on anything, or, never make a mistake. We know that they're hiding something. So I've just tried to really build a very transparent organization where people don't have to hide who they are. where we really accept and love people for who they are, and where people feel like they really belong and they don't have to cover themselves up or be someone they're not. And then also as leaders, where we're able to look at our team and say, I really don't know what to do, or I really messed this up, and taking that pressure off of people to just have to be perfect all the time. So we've created a place where people are allowed to mess up. Of course, we have to learn from those things. Messing up has to come with accountability, but we're here to learn and to grow, and we don't expect anyone to be perfect. And I think that is why we have people who don't want to leave StudentMaid, because they know that this environment is so special. So it just shows that it doesn't matter what industry you're in. For all of you listening, I know how challenging, the service industry is, and we all have the power to create this kind of environment.
Yeah, I think also when, our pros are often, just doing the work, they're physically doing the work. The culture, the people, find ways to get everyone all together in the morning or to do the debriefs, because those are the moments where they're not working alone. They're not just out in the field by themselves. So we can increase those collisions between team members. You really foster that bond, like you mentioned, which really just gives them that feeling of safety, so they can go and they continue and they get a lot of value and worth out of the work they're doing besides literally the work. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's often overlooked because it's so easy to just go to the next job, go to the next job, go to the next job, go to sleep, go to the next job. It's good to have those spaces in between.
Mm-hmm. So it's, I think when you look at the ingredients of what goes into making a place feel human, one is I think you have to focus on relationships. At StudentMaid, what we do, so our teams work in teams of 2, and we have them meet at our office before they go from job to job to connect with their partner, to learn more about their partner. And then they work their jobs through the day, and then they come back and they do that debrief you're talking about. How did today go? What could have been better? So there's that intentional relationship time built in. And then we bring our whole team together every few months. We call it Development Day. And what we do is we teach them something that will help them in their lives. We ask them what they want to learn about. Sometimes they want to learn how to make a budget. Sometimes they want to make a plan for their dreams. It's all kinds of stuff. But then we use that time for relationships. Everyone shares what's going on in their life, because like you, we have people that are at different job sites all throughout the day, and we're very rarely all together. So we have to take that time and be intentional about that relationship time. And then I think communication, just being really honest. When you notice that someone could be better, say it. When you notice that someone has a growing opportunity, say it. When you want your team to give you feedback about how to make the business better, ask for it. I think human environments are ones in which we can say what we feel here and what we're thinking here, and not have a fear around being honest. Mm-hmm. So those are 2 things we try to really focus on, is the communication and the relationships. And then telling people it's okay if you mess up, as long as you're making a decision with our values in mind and coming from the right place. If the outcome is bad, we will learn from it. But if you make a decision out of greed, out of selfishness, dishonest, that we have no tolerance for. But just making people feel safe, because you want people to feel empowered and like they're doing this with you.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious to know what your performance reviews are like and the type of environment that you create for your employees. Do you do performance reviews like on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis? Because on your website, it says we're raising the next generation of leaders. And so you kind of touched on some programs that you have in place to endorse that. But what does that one-on-one developmental time look like?
So we believe that feedback should be ongoing, regular, that we shouldn't wait for reviews to talk about the ways that someone could be better, or to highlight their superpowers and their contributions. So we use a tool called the FBI. And this is something we teach to every student that comes through our doors. It is the way that we give feedback. It's the way we give recognition. And it comes from a company that we love called Berry-Way-Miller. And the FBI stands for Feeling, Behavior, Impact. How do you feel? What's the behavior that made you feel this way? What's the impact of that behavior? So let's say someone's late, okay? And let's say they have a habit of being a little bit late. So you could wait until you have your next review with them to tell them that. But how many days are gonna go by until that review? We believe, let's just address it. So this is what an FBI would look like. I feel disappointed that you're 30 minutes late to your shift. And the impact is now I'm unsure if I can rely on you. And I don't want to feel that way. Can you help me understand what's happening? So we teach people how to use their voice. Everyone knows how to use the FBI. Our students give it to us. We give it to them. But then we also do reviews for a more, a deeper reflection. But the key is that everything in the review isn't a surprise. We've already talked about it. We've addressed it with FBIs. So we do a quarterly review, and we'll ask questions like, how happy are you at work? And how would you rate our communication? How would you rate our teamwork? How would you rate your trust in us? And that kind of helps us see how we're doing on a team level. And then we'll ask them more individually, how they feel they're doing in their role. We'll tell them how we see it, and we want to make sure we're aligned. But the FBI is something that happens on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I think that also flows back into kind of the radical candor aspect of it. It's because they feel safe and they feel cared for. Therefore, those FBIs aren't coming from a place of like malintent or, as an attack. It really is just a, hey, help me understand. And because you're sharing that out first, then it lessens the, I guess, maybe the attack nature of something like that, to allow them to truly open up to have higher chance to get to resolution, right? To have them amend or change their behavior, because now they fully understand the impact it has on others. Because no one wants to let anyone else down. We're all humans. That's super, super helpful.
Yeah, and so I'm sure this will really resonate with everyone. I felt like I had to be a cheerleader all the time, that I had to constantly tell people how amazing they were because the job's really hard. I was so afraid to lose people because such high turnover in the service industry, right? And so I was so afraid that if someone's performance wasn't where I thought it should be, if I actually gave them the honest feedback, that they would quit. So I would sweep it under the rug. I wouldn't address it. I would fix things myself. And then as the business grew, I learned that that wasn't sustainable, that I couldn't inspect every job, that I couldn't clean up after everyone, that I had to expect that people could do what the expectations were. So then what I would do is I would sugarcoat my feedback. And maybe some of you listening do this. And if so, you're not alone. I did it too.
Me.
It's like, oh, this positive thing, and then you sandwich in the actual thing, and then you end with something else positive. But what I learned is when you do that, you confuse people because they don't actually know what you're trying to say. Are you complimenting them, or is there something that they need to do that's better? And I think it's Brene Brown who says, clear is kind. We have to be clear with people. So that's why I love the FBI. And when I learned that tool, that it made it much easier for me to lean into those difficult conversations. But what I've learned overall about all the feedback stuff is that feedback builds trust. That the more you can be honest with people, the more they know where they stand and they trust you. Even when the feedback can hurt, we're thankful that we have someone that is willing to be honest with us. And we know that they're not hiding anything, because if this person has a pattern of telling us how they feel all the time, we always know that they're being honest. Does that make sense?
Yes. And the differentiator between sandwiching together the positive and the negative, you should just have them separate. You can still give positive feedback, which is something I actually learned at Housecall from our senior vice president of people, Mel. She said, it doesn't have to be, okay, positive, negative, positive, because you're scared, but you can just pull someone aside and say, hey, can I give you some feedback? And they're immediately like, oh no, why do you want to give me feedback? But it's about something great they did. Maybe they did a great presentation, or a customer spoke really highly about them over the phone. And that's it. And then you're conditioning them to take the more constructive feedback when you do have it. So that is a really important lesson there.
Yeah.
I like that method. All right, let's switch gears just a little bit here. Obviously, we're in tough times right now, and I don't want to focus too much on that part of it, but I do believe that there's so much opportunity for innovation, doing things that previously you weren't, and really kind of riding with the punches. What are some of the biggest challenges and changes are you seeing in the home service space, and in particular like home cleaning? Because I know home cleaners have been affected a lot, as a non-essential but very essential service.
Right. Yeah, I remember at the beginning of all this, we had a brainstorming session with our team, and the question that we asked is, what if we could never clean a house again? Because at that time, we weren't sure. Maybe that is what the future would look like. And so it was what you said, like, no idea is a bad idea. Come into the idea box, anything, throw it on the wall, let's see what sticks. And so we realized there's a lot that we could do. Like, one of the things that is unique about our company is our focus on leadership development. And could we maybe expand that part of our business to, all these ideas. We closed for 2 months. And in those 2 months, we took the time to get certified in different, ways to clean, understanding COVID, really looking at our training procedures and just ways that we could keep our customers safer, our team members safer. We went from working in teams of 2 to teams of 1. We started by cleaning vacant spaces and working in more commercial spaces and cleaning after hours. So we definitely had to shake things up. But I think the biggest thing that came out of it for us were these weekly all hands meetings where our whole team would come on Zoom and we would meet once a week to connect personally, to talk about where we are in the business, how close we are to being back to 100%. And I started to see just this real buy-in and ownership. And I thought, what took us so long to have these weekly meetings? So we still have, even though we've reopened, we still have those weekly meetings every week. It's been a really powerful way to engage our team and really help people feel ownership. And we're not back to 100%. We're every week we get closer and closer, but it's a tough time. And I think as leaders, what we want to do in a time like this is we want to make our people feel safe. When they're afraid, we want to make them feel like everything's okay. And I think what's difficult about this is no one has the answers. We don't know what the future will exactly look like. And so we can't really look at our people and tell them with confidence, here's what's going to happen. So I think we have to lead with empathy, and the goal isn't to change people's feelings, it's to acknowledge how they feel. So if someone feels afraid, that's okay. It's okay that you feel afraid. Of course, sometimes you feel afraid. I feel afraid too. And just helping people feel like what they are feeling is okay and validating and really hearing and seeing them. And I think that's what this season is about.
Yeah, acknowledge. I feel like that's like another golden nugget. Just acknowledge. Yeah, I get it. It's okay. I feel the same way. That goes a really, really long way with building that relationship.
Mm-hmm. And Kristen, I feel like for you, there's even another level to that, being there for your employees during this time, because you don't even live in the same city as where your company is. And that's actually true for a lot more pros than you would expect, whether or not you live in the town over or in a completely different state. What advice do you have for leading your people when you aren't physically with them?
Yeah. So our entire executive team is remote, and we've been remote for 5 years. And what I've learned in these last 5 years is that your meetings are everything, because when you're not in the physical space together, you lose all of those small moments of interaction, like walking by someone's office or taking a lunch break and going out to lunch together. You lose all that. So now all you have are your meetings. And I think sometimes we're not intentional with our meetings. We don't think about what's the purpose of this meeting? What do we need to solve in this meeting? How do we want people to feel in this meeting? How do we use this meeting to make our relationships stronger, our trust stronger? So I would recommend, if you like to read, reading a book called Death by Meeting. It's a book by Patrick Lencioni, and it just shows us that our meetings could be a lot better and a lot more effective than they are. And I would think about, how often do you meet with your team? I would suggest meeting with your team once a week if you're not doing that already. Thinking about how do you make this the most amazing meeting to bring your team together and have everyone feel connected? Could you incorporate some personal piece to it? Maybe it's a personal check-in, update everyone on where the business is, talk about the goals, have everyone really understand the bigger picture. So our meetings are absolutely everything. With the pandemic, I was actually in Florida for 2 months to be with the team because I felt like I needed to be with them. And so I left my family to be with our team for 2 months. And even though we weren't physically together, just being in the same state, I don't know, it made me feel better. But it's a challenge. And especially when you're going through a crisis, you as a leader feel this enormous responsibility to take care of people. So when you're not in the same place, it's really hard.
I feel, especially now more than ever, we also have daily stand-ups. We have stand-downs, and I feel like we wake up. When we go through our personal lives, then we stand up, and that gets the kind of the day started. And at the end, hey, what's something you either we throw different questions out there, like what's the one thing that you found most challenging, or what's the thing that you're most proud of. We try to kind of like rotate it so we can have different threads of conversation. And sometimes there's not really so much as a purpose of the meeting in so much as there is a meeting for us just to connect and talk about something, which just helps forward that normally we would have had those collisions, in an office space and things like that. And I can imagine too, for service businesses, you've got everybody just out and about all the time, running around supply warehouses, et cetera. So finding times just to have that is super important. And you've done a great job and being able to do it remotely for so long. And then ultimately, being there for a couple months, even in the same kind of location. But I feel like that's often underlooked and not utilized in the right way.
You've been really good at those questions lately, Roland. The one that stuck out to me last week was for our stand down, describe a situation that happened this week and describe it first with the glass half empty and then describe it with the glass half full. And I thought that was one of your best stand down questions yet.
I love that. Yeah, so we're starting something new. We actually kick it off tomorrow called Team Time. And it's 1 hour. It's for our executive team. It's 1 hour for us to just come online, and it's a more in-depth personal update. So yeah, we have personal time in meetings where we check in, but it's usually 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then everyone has work to do. So we're doing this every 2 weeks where we just take 1 hour and we just do a little bit of a deeper dive. We have someone on our team who's a new mom, and it's like, how is she doing? How is her adjustment? Let's talk about that. I'm moving in a couple weeks. I want to fill the team in on all the stress that comes along with moving, so we don't really have the time to necessarily do that in meetings. So every 2 weeks, we're going to do this team time. It kicks off tomorrow. But that's funny is even though I went to Florida for 2 months, the team would have been fine if I wasn't there. I wasn't physically even really with them. It was just something about me that felt, I need to physically be there. But our teams are capable. And if we can help them feel empowered, they will show up and they will deliver. And so I think the biggest thing is just how do you as a leader help your team feel like they have the power and that they're doing this with you, and to invite them in and not feel like you have to solve everything on your own, that it's not all on your shoulders. People want to help, but you have to invite them in.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, especially as leaders, they feel like, okay, I need to set the direction, I need to do this. But in reality, everybody's perfectly capable. And the one thing that you mentioned earlier, which is like, as long as you're following the values. So if you set up those values correctly for your business and they're operating under that, they're so empowered to make the right decisions with or without you there. And if you don't have that core kind of piece lined up for your business, it makes it a lot harder because they don't know what framework by which they should be making the decisions. And so if you have those clearly outlined, they'll go through, for ours, it's like, number one, champion the pro. Am I championing the pro? The second one is, fearless innovation. Am I taking risks, my business, and everything kind of goes down from there. And the last one, which is like, am I having fun? Am I enjoying the journey? And so like, when you have those values in place, you can empower others to use that framework to create decisions which reflect what you would want in a business. And oftentimes, I know a lot of business owners out there have that fear, that angst of just letting go. And that happens very often too when you're an owner operator and you're transitioning from like owner operator, and then all of a sudden you're not in the field anymore and someone else is doing the work. And it's like, oh, but is it done right? Is it not? Like you can start having things work right, because you cannot possibly scale if people are not empowered. There's no way to scale if they're not empowered to make their own decisions. And so that often is that big step, and you've definitely correctly identified that and helped our pros kind of learn along that way.
So can I teach one thing that helps with empowering?
Yes.
Sure.
So huge. Okay, it's called the 1-3-1. It is magic. So if you want to empower your people to start thinking of solutions and thinking of their own ideas, you can use this tool. So the way it works, the 1 is, what is the challenge? What is the problem? What is the obstacle? The 3 are, what are 3 ideas that you have to solve that challenge, that problem, that obstacle? And then the 1 is, what is your recommendation? Out of all 3 of those solutions, what is the one thing you think we should do? So when someone comes to me with a challenge, instead of solving it for them, I see it as a chance to empower them and to help them realize that they're capable. So I say, okay, go back and think about your 1-3-1 and then come back and share it with me. So then they'll come back and say, all right, here's the problem. Here's 3 ideas I have, and here's what I think we should do. And then sometimes I give feedback, or maybe what they recommend is not really what I think is the best idea, but I'll give them feedback. I'll say, here's what I think about that. Here's the pros, here's the cons, maybe go think about it a little bit more. So if you can start getting in the habit of asking instead of telling, what do you think? What are your ideas? Instead of, here's what I think we should do. Because if you're in a situation where your phone is ringing all day with questions from your team members all day, it's a sign that they feel like they need your approval, or they're afraid to fail, And so the best way to turn that situation around and that dynamic around is to ask them what they think and require that they come to the table with solutions. And pretty soon they'll get used to that and they'll be in that new habit. So that's been huge for us. And then the other thing I would say, especially about this time, is defining what success looks like. For us, we had to depart from our original goals for the year. And success for us right now is very simple. It's taking care of our people. We want to look back on this and say that throughout this whole thing, we took care of our people every step of the way, that we kept everyone employed and that we took care of them. And if we can do that, it's success. So just what is it for your business? You know, it can be something different. And how do you explain that so that everyone understands that success right now looks like this? Because if we're still holding on to what we said it looked like in January, it may not be the same. And people may feel like we're failing because we're not reaching that, when that's not the goal anymore, because we're in a different world. So I would encourage you to think about that. Like, what story do you want to write in your business, on your team, and how do you help your team understand that?
And have a hand in writing it with you too, which is what we've learned this whole time. That's so powerful.
Really good. So, Kristen, let's talk a little bit about, do you have any words of encouragement for any of our pros that are having difficulty retaining their employees or being the leader they want to be? Because, you know, obviously we're watching this Pro Talks. We've been doing so many different episodes. It's like, yes, I want to be this, I want to be this, but maybe they feel like they haven't reached that quite yet. What kind of words of encouragement do you have? Maybe some things that you told yourself kind of along the way.
So I think we have to redefine what success looks like in leadership and business. It's not always a bad thing that people are moving on. Sometimes people move on because they have a better opportunity. And we should be happy and supportive of that, right? We want our people to be the best that they can be. Sometimes people move on because they're not the right fit, or they don't embody the values, or they were just in it for the paycheck and they don't understand the bigger picture or your bigger dream or vision. So I've learned that success is the people who are still sticking around, but also the people who have left even better for having worked with the business, and those who left because they felt that it wasn't the right fit and maybe they would be happier somewhere else. So I think we have to stop measuring our success by people leaving. Now, sometimes we play a role in people leaving. Sometimes we lose really great people, and I've lost really great people because of my poor leadership. And those are gifts because they teach us. And I thank the people who have left, and I look back and I'm so grateful for them because they taught me powerful lessons. And usually after a departure like that, I grew as a leader. Something you can do if you've had people who you know are really great people that you really didn't want to lose, but they've left, you could call them and ask, hey, can I just have a candid conversation with you? Will you be honest about just the ways that I could have been better as a leader and a business owner? You know, we call it an exit interview. Like, tell me the truth. I want to learn, I want to grow. So could you do that? But leadership is hard. Entrepreneurship is hard. If it were easy, everyone would do it. So when you have a hard moment, just know you're not alone. And there are many other leaders and entrepreneurs in that same exact moment somewhere else feeling the same way. Something you could do is I have a shoebox where I keep all of my best memories of the business. So when I get a good note from a client or from a team member or just something that happened that I want to remember, I'll type it up, I'll print it out, I'll put it in this box. And when I have a really hard day, the kind of day where I'm questioning, why do I do this? Should I give up? I just open that box and it takes 5 minutes for me to remember why it all matters.
That's so clever. So
like
I do something similar, and inside of Slack, I get one of those messages and I Slack it to like myself, which sounds kind of weird, but they're all in there. They could be screenshots, they could be emails, they could be sound bites, sound clips, but they're all in there. So if I ever feel like, oh my gosh, like this is so frustrating, I quickly go back to there. I'm like, okay, it's all right. We're all good.
Mm-hmm. Kristen, what you just shared by redefining your success, not as by people leaving you, I think is so important for this audience, because Roland and I can tell you all day long, one of the biggest things we see in our communities is people not fully trusting their employees because they are so scared that they're going to leave, they're going to take their customers, or they're going to move on. But if you don't trust them fully, they're gonna leave no matter what. But not defining your success by the people leaving you, I think, is maybe what that mental roadblock might be for our pros.
Yeah, I try to look at it like, how do we help people become the best they can be? how do we help people achieve their dreams? There's a great book called The Dream Manager. It's actually written, it's a story of a cleaning company. And it's about this cleaning company that hires a dream manager. And the dream manager's job is to understand what the dreams are of all the people working in this cleaning company and hold them accountable for reaching those dreams. And some of those dreams take them outside of the company. It means they leave the company. But it's a story of how all these people feel like they're growing and becoming better people by working in this company. And because they know the company really cares about them and their growth, they don't want to go anywhere else. And that's kind of what happened at StudentMaid. The moment I stopped focusing on keeping people and I just focused on investing in people and helping them become the best them, then all of a sudden people didn't want to leave. So I think when we take our focus off of that and we invest anyway and we trust anyway, that's when we show our people that we really, really care about them and they mean a lot to us. And then I think we see a different response.
Yeah. And ultimately the people that do end up leaving your company because they move on to maybe bigger or better things or things that they were originally interested in, they'll actually become your biggest advocates to bring people back through the system because they only got to where they are because of you. And so, it is a longer term vision. And, Simon would call this, playing the infinite game. And you're taking this, it's just a progression and it's always going to happen and people will come in and come out. But as long as you do right, it'll always come back to you, to your business and help you along the way.
Totally.
So your book, not The Dream Manager, but Permission to Screw Up. Can you please share with us what that's about? And we are actually going to be giving away a bunch of copies of this book, but Roland and I, there's always a caveat and a challenge to it, but it is always to make you and your business better. So Kristen, can you please share kind of why you wrote it and what it's done so far in the world?
Sure. So I had always wanted to write a book, but I never really was serious about it. And was giving a talk about culture, about StudentMaid, and my publisher happened to be in the audience. And after this talk asked me to write a book. So the way I got my book contract was kind of backwards because I didn't have an idea for a book. I didn't have a proposal. I was given the contract and then I had to figure out what to write about. And so I was really stuck on that question. And I wrote a couple of different versions of books and none of them felt right. And it was actually Simon. We were at dinner one night and I asked him, how do you know if you're writing the right book? And Simon told me the right book is the one that is the hardest to write. And I thought a lot about that and how the versions I had written before weren't hard because they were all about success. I was writing about all the things that StudentMaid had done right and it felt empty. So I started to think about, what would make it hard and what was the book that I wish I had read or found on the shelf. And I realized it was the book about mistakes. I wanted to write a book of all the things I had done wrong. And some of these things are really embarrassing, things that I don't want people to know. But I wish I would have known that there were other people that had made similar mistakes. And I think we are very good at showing the filtered side of us and very good at highlighting the amazing things we've done. And we'll talk about our mistakes, but only the ones that have happened so long ago. But are we talking about the mistake that we just made last week? Are we talking about the things that we're currently struggling with? As I was writing this, I lost someone on my team who had been with me for over 8 years. She decided to leave the company. I decided to write about it as I was going through it because it's real and because someone out there is having the same thing happen to them. So yeah, this is a book of all my screw ups. And and I could probably write 4 more versions of it from just the screw ups I've made since this one came out. But I think what it's doing for people is it's showing that we have permission to screw up. We just have to give it to ourselves. We can only give ourselves that permission. And when we do, and when we can talk about it, we make other people feel safe screwing up and talking about it too. And we just feel more human and normal.
All right, I'm gonna have to pick up this book because I'm super curious. And I love seeing that because, people will often only show you kind of the tip of the iceberg, which is that success, but they fail to show everything else that's underneath it, that took to get to that point, which is often all those, those failures, as embarrassing as they might be. So for our pros, what question do you want to have them answer? So that way we'll go buy the book and ship it to them. So this is gonna be a question that they have to answer. And so they're gonna go text Pro Talks to 31996 and we'll put it in like little subtitles and stuff here. But they got to text Pro Talks to 31996. When you get there, you're going to get a link to a Google form. And there's going to be a question in there that you have to answer. And this is Kristen's question to you guys. So this is her challenger question. You guys have to answer this. If you answer it, there's no correct answer, but you do have to answer it thoughtfully. If you answer it thoughtfully, we'll buy the book and ship it to you. So what is that question?
Okay, to get this book, all right, the challenger question is, what is the biggest challenge that is weighing on you most in your business? And after listening to this conversation, what are you going to do about it?
That's perfect.
Ooh.
Pros. What is the biggest challenge that's weighing on you guys, and what are you going to do to change it? So that action step, because it's not going to get any better if you don't put it in action.
And Kristen, thank you for joining Roland and I and sharing your time with us. If our pros and our lady pros want to keep following you and see what else you're putting out into the world, where can they get more of Kristen and your team?
So you can go to my website. Here's how you spell my name, Kristen Hadeed. It's just kristenhadeed.com. You can find me on social media. I would suggest subscribing to my blog because every Tuesday I have something that will go straight to your inbox. I just write about my latest screw ups, my leadership challenges, things that we're doing in StudentMaid. So maybe these posts every week will get you thinking. So I would subscribe to that. And you can contact us anytime through the website. So if there's ever anything we can help you with, or you want to learn more about how StudentMaid does something, please send us a message and we will be more than happy to support.
And the last time we talked, you shared that your team has been creating a guide for how to build relationships. How can our pros go and find that? Is that also there?
If you go to the website, kristenhadeed.com, there's a page called resources. And on the resource page, you'll see a lot of things, favorite books and why I love them. But if you scroll all the way at the bottom, you'll see a ton of different guides. So you'll see guides to creating a compassionate accountability system, guides to feedback, guides to vulnerability and building deeper relationships. And these are all written by our team from our experience. All the guides are pay what you can. So you could put 0 and you could get all of them for free. So I would really encourage you to go to that page because there's a lot of resources on there that show you how StudentMaid has created the culture that it has.
That's so powerful. Pros, this is a great resource. Take advantage of it and then pay what you can. I love it. Such an innovative business model and just a way to get back also and deliver value before, someone gives you back some value. So that's so cool. I love seeing stuff like that. Thank you so much for spending the time with us on Pro Talks talking. We learned a lot from you and we'll hopefully catch you another time too.
Yeah. I'm going to give everyone a hug because I always am with the Zoom hug. So hugs to everyone.
Hugs. Oh, Kristen, you're so great. I can't wait to premiere this episode. I know our lady pros are really excited that we are interviewing you. And that's how I kind of got some inspiration for how our questions should go today too. But once we have the episode already, we'll send it over to you and Monique just to have it on hand. I have your media kit and everything, and you did already give me the contact for those books. So we will be reaching out to that contact to purchase them.
You guys are awesome. I love it.
Thank you, Kristen.
Yeah, that was super cool.
Other than that, I'm definitely going to be following you on Instagram to get some more Kristen. And
yeah. If you think of someone that you think would be good for the show, Kristen, we'd love to just have an intro or something where we say, hey, talk to these people and see if we can get them on. Because I feel like anything that has like a home service spin, I love just story plus the leadership angle. I don't know, guests like that are really unique because you don't see that happen very often.
I have a couple names. I'd look into them and tell me. And if you want an introduction, I can facilitate one. Ron Holt, who is the CEO of Two Maids and a Mop, huge cleaning franchise. Jess Ekstrom, who is not in the service business, but has a company called Headbands of Hope, where she creates, it's headbands for kids with cancer. And I think it just shows a way that as an organization, you could give back and find a bigger cause.
yes.
Those are the two that I would start with.
Oh, that would be awesome. And Roland and I will send you an email too, but they sound great. That second one, the Headbands for Hope. I always try to teach our pros, how can you connect yourself with local nonprofits? How can you connect yourself with a bigger organization? Because it gives you also another higher purpose rather than just putting money in the bank, and having someone to speak on that would be incredible.
Yeah.
Right.
I like
She's
that.
unique story because her uncle was Bernie Madoff. So she talks about how, that legacy, she wanted to change it and she didn't want to be defined by what he did. So it's a really powerful story. So I can, her and Ron. And then if there's anyone else I think of, I'll send them your way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
We'll talk to you soon. Bye,
Okay.
Kristen.
Bye. Have a good one.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. Look forward to seeing you next week. For more information, go to housecallpro.com/pro talks.